One of the things that you had mentioned was La vida negras importan,
Can
right?
I
So,
can I stop this because it's going
hold up.
into
No, just a second, right? La vida negras, las vidas negras importan, right? And so that is what I'm grounded in this conversation. You know, given what we spoke about, there wasn't a space about like, oh, we're gonna kind of debate over what that is. Again, trying to eliminate distractions. Right now, I'm not here to have a conversation about Latinos and what we're up to. What I'm talking about is the importance of Black life and Latinos in defense of Black life. That's what I want to talk about.
Perfect. And it needs to be spoken about, and that there's roots to that. Trust me, I'm pro. I'm here. I'm fighting my own. Like I was just having a conversation with my soon-to-be ex-husband, who
Live, we heard it on YouTube Live.
and then, but this is the
wrong guy.
reality. I had to sit and have a conversation with him and explain what is happening in my family under what's going on with the circumstances in the world.
Yeah.
And that I had to face one of the people I love most in my life to tell her she was absolutely wrong and I am not okay with it. And I had to remind her of who her granddaughter was, of who the child that I gave birth to is. No matter what I look like, no matter what she looks like, no matter what my mother looks like, no matter how things are going. So trust me when I tell you. So I'm gonna let Rick, let's get this started. And we'll go
Jayla,
ahead.
I appreciate you sharing that with me, Jayla. Especially for this being the first time that we like
interact,
met, quote unquote,
Absolutely.
you know, like a Zoom meetup, you know?
No, absolutely. And just know, like, I'm very like I'm here for it, and I'm very particular because of my career and what I do and like how I have to speak.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's not always easy to share what I do, but I do the best that I can under my circumstances. And right now I'm in a very and I'm in a huge phase in my life where I'm learning, I'm observing, I'm growing, not only for me, but for the daughter that I gave birth to that has to step out into the world as a Black child.
Yeah.
So, with all that being said, as you could tell, we were just trying to.
We're grounding. This is what grounding is.
It's some grounding.
We're going right into it. Welcome to the show. First off, I want to say rest in peace, George Floyd. Our prayers and thoughts with
Nina
his
Pop,
family.
Breonna Taylor, both them, Jean, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, Philando Castile, Everett Garner, Freddie Gray, Akai Gurley, Oscar Grant, Laquan McDonald, the whole Oklahoma Tulsa 1921, Sean Bell, Amadou Diallo, Jordan Davis, Walter Scott, Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, Alton Sterling, Stephon Clark, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, David McCaddy, Emmett Till, and all the other ones that haven't been reported and that we don't know about.
So those are a lot of names, and just the history of police brutality, and not just police brutality, because it's not just about police. It's also about the importance of how Black lives are viewed in this world. And I was actually watching The Wire in season 4, and there's a reference to Black lives in Baltimore and how they're viewed. 22 murders are nothing compared to one white woman that was murdered. So if you haven't seen The Wire, it's a good show to watch. I want to welcome my brother Luis Alejandro to the show. Craze Boogie's here, Jaylah's here, and Justin is producing the show. Before we get into it, just a quick background on how this episode came about. So some things have been happening in the world, and a movement has been, well, not started because it's been started. I just felt lately there's been a lot of distractions being thrown in between the media, between people being worried about the looting, protesters being called rioters. It's just little terms that have been thrown out there that are distracting people from what we should actually be focusing on, which is defunding the police. It is also repealing 50A. We're going to get into that, and many other subjects. So, as you all know, it was televised. George Floyd was murdered live. I think a 17-year-old was the one that recorded the video. Yesterday, they finally arrested and charged the other 3 officers that were involved, which started it was enough. I mean, Black people have felt that it's been enough. It's so blatant now. Everything is being recorded, so it cannot be denied. So Louis and I and Craze had a conversation a couple of days ago, and we have this platform, and this is why we created this platform, to talk about issues that need to be talked about, especially from men.
You know, we're all friends. We all grew up, you know, uptown, and we've seen a lot of stuff that's been happening, and we kind of have felt like we want to say something. We want to support. We've been doing our own version of support to social media with donating and stuff like that. But we have someone who does racial equity training and this type of work specifically in, you know, our family, in our brotherhood, which is Luis Alejandro, our boy. We affectionately call him Big Lou. You know, we just thought that it'd be perfect. He reached out to us actually about wanting to do something like this, and so the last couple of days we kind of been thinking about what we actually want to do, how to do it, and so we kind of put this episode together. It's like a special episode. We wanted to focus on this issue. It's something that we can't just do a regular episode and know that this is going on. We want to show solidarity and support, and we also want to hear from someone who does this kind of work and can kind of give us a little bit of a broader understanding of what's going on. Something, because we call this specifically, Rick had the idea for that, something about distractions, because there's a lot of things that we're seeing now that kind of take us away from the point, which is Black lives do matter. It doesn't seem like it usually from a law enforcement perspective. And so Lou, if you want to kind of give us like an overview of kind of like what we've been talking about, like topics that we kind of wanted to touch on, because we had a couple bullet points that we kind of really wanted to emphasize. And I think the first one, you know, on your agenda was what?
Media as a distraction in defending Black lives.
Yeah, bro.
Word. I mean, so thank you, all of y'all.
Thank you for being here, by the way.
Thank
And
you.
tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, tell us a little bit about your passion, your background. Like, you know, you're from the get-go, you're extremely passionate. So tell us about that.
So I have to give credit to my Aries sign. For
Yes, Aries in the house.
So I'm an Aries, Scorpio, Gemini. If you're into that type of stuff, you know, I got thoughts on things and I move into them. And I also, you know, I'm also cuddly and you can count on me and stuff like that. I mean, you guys can tell more about who I am. And I hope that in previous session, thank you, Rick. I think this will be maybe the second or third time that I'm invited to your show. And I do want to just commend you and y'all for really, I would say, taking a risk, right? Using your platform, taking a risk, and not necessarily moving in the way that the status quo tells you to move, right? And so what I mean by status quo is, you know, we could get into the history of like the development of like Black characters, the development of you know, minorities, even the word minorities, right? The way that is used in media continues to perpetuate a story of us not being enough, right? When you think about who we are and the number of people that are on this country, right, that claim to have descendants and heritage from other countries, right, and that are people of color, that are Black people, that are indigenous people, right, we are the majority, right? And so there's nothing minor in that. And so first thing is the distraction of us considering ourselves minorities, right? The distraction of us believing that we are not enough to make change. One of the scariest things, one of the deadliest things is for us to really, I would say, believe that we can't do anything besides what's already possible, right? That's one of the deadliest things. That's when we kind of like lock the chains on ourselves. When we're saying, yo, these are the only thing that's possible and nothing else impossible. And you know what? And I want to retract that about locking the chains on ourselves, because I do need to also acknowledge the years of conditioning that we go through in order to get to that point, right? And that's through our families, right? That's through our churches, that's through our schools, right? That's through the conversations that we're in we ride the train, that's in the advertisements that we see out in the world. And so I want to retract that and really reframe that, right? That there is a condition that goes about it. And so relevant to this point, the media plays a large role in conditioning us to believe that we're not enough, right? The media plays a large role in conditioning us to believe that those people are our enemies, right? The media conditions us to believe in what is right and what is wrong. And so when you think about all these different kind of mediums, right? When we talk about the media, we have social media, right? So we got the Instagrams, we got the Facebooks, right? We have the blogs, we have the news channels, right? We have the newspapers, right? We have the podcasts, we have a barrage of mediums coming at us that are telling us this is right, this is wrong. This is the enemy, this is the good person. This is the next move you need to make. This is what makes you look good. This is what looks bad. This is what you need to be against, right? And so the media is a distraction currently, specifically in our community, right? One of the things that I've been noticing specifically that we want to address is this aspect of protest,
Wait,
right? This aspect of a protest, right? And notice the language protest. Notice the language rally. Notice the language demonstration, right? Notice the language uprising, right? If I don't hear that in the way that what's happening in our world is presented, then I turn the channel, then I turn it off, right?
Well, the word
Craze,
peaceful.
you're on mute. I'm sorry.
The word peaceful protest has been
Yeah.
thrown.
I think Craze got something to say, but before we get into there, right?
Yeah.
So for me, we're talking about, framing, right? Like, essentially, we're talking about like framing, and how media kind of frames, the black man, let's say, right? For example, there's a few different type of let's call it like archetypes.
Types.
But specifically, what's going on right now, even when we're talking about these protests, we just got to look at like the Latin American media, right? That's one of the things that we had kind of talked about a little bit, which is like what does Latin American media look like? And like for us, like my parents, my family members, my aunt, my cousins, my older cousins, versus like people that are our age, or younger, they're receiving a different type of media than we are. They're watching Univision, they're watching what's the other channel? I'm not really following the channel.
Telemundo.
Telemundo.
I don't know. I thought they had found out that happened, but those channels, I feel like I know specifically Univision because I've sat there with my parents, and like I had to just have a conversation with my mom yesterday about the coverage. That their focus is like looting. Their message is like, oh, people are out here looting, be careful, they're destroying. The sensational part of it that is like, that's what's like, to them is like sexy. They love,
And that's even crazy for me to hear that somebody like you, Craze, to say that, because I know from what I've learned, from what I've been around, most of the Dominican community really does go back home and they listen to a lot of like their own channels. They find a way to kind of get that. So they don't really take that Telemundo, Univision perspective a lot. For me, I'm Central American. I'm Costa Rican, Salvadorian. So I live two very drastic worlds. I live a yin and a yang. I grew up where my grandfather, his name is Choco because he's black. He looks like chocolate. And that's why they call him, I call him Papi
Shout out to
Colo.
all the Dominican chocos.
No, and I'm not, imagine, I'm Costa Rican. So for me, I grew up in our country knowing that my aunt has blue eyes and blonde hair, but my cousin is black Jamaican descent because they grew up in Limon, which is a whole nother side of Costa Rica. So it's like, okay, how does that all kind of intertwine where you come and my dad meets my mother in New York, in Long Island, and he meets a Salvadorian woman where the darkest people they see is realistically gray. They're gray. They're indigenous. They're not black. They don't know what black is. In El Salvador, my mom, I remember the day she told me, I had never seen a black person a day in my life until I came to the United States. And that to me was like mind blown because I grew up with no color. So it was very weird when I started to hear between my parents that there's colors and that there's levels of colors. And that didn't make sense to me.
Well, yeah, it's also. Go ahead, Lou.
I mean, so I think what you're naming is the illusion, like one of the distractions, um, called race, right? And so I say that, and I say that also with the fact that, yes, right, it is a social construct, and it has real life implications, right? And so in no way am I telling people, oh no, you see it's fake, we shouldn't believe. No, no, like it is something that was made up, and there are consequences for following it or for not following it, right? There are real life consequences for being darker skin than being lighter skin. There's different consequences, than being a black person, than being an Asian person, than being a light skinned white passing Latinx person, right? There's different consequences. And so it's important to hold a both and in that situation, you know. And so I also want to name, right, this, that has been something that was made up, right? It was made up and it's been around for a long time. And unfortunately, it's also tied with capitalism, right? And even more of a grievous thing, and a whack is too small of a word for what the word actually is. But the thing is that this state, the United States, was built on that, right? It was built on these concepts of race and racism. It was built on slavery, right? The United States. And that may have been different, right? When other nations have been forming, they may not have been like, oh, this is how we're gonna do it. We're gonna take, we're gonna enslave people from different places. We're gonna loot other countries so that we could build our country, right? And so I'm in that conversation a lot, and I do think that we should make also like space for that. If interested, like in another space, right? About like, oh, what is the Latin American identity around race, because that is an important thing, and I'm hoping that we can also give some resources for folks to be also so much more informed in that conversation, because I want to name that a lot of what's happening right now is a lot of people are like, yo, I've had enough, right?
Absolutely.
And I need to speak up. And because they may not feel, articulate in like, what it is that they're talking about, or maybe they feel like, oh, wait, I need to bring them evidence. I may not know how to do that. I also think that it's important to let people see like, okay, these are places we could learn about these things, right? And so bringing it back to this concept about like looting, right? And also media perception, right? When you think about the way that media has displayed what's happening right now, right? The primary focus about it has been property, right? There hasn't been there's been no talk about like, well, how do we defund the police, right? How do we criminalize these heinous actions, right, that law enforcement officials have taken against individuals, right? And then we've also been tricked to believe that we get to police the way that people get to voice their anger, their rage, their frustration, right? And their like across generations, that oppression across generations, right? That we get to kind of be like, oh, that's not the way you do it. You need to do it with more class, right?
I don't think it's about doing it with more class. I think that we low key live in this silent world that everybody knows that they do things with. It's like a double meaning. And I think that's a lot of the problem. And if you're real with yourself, and if you're real with the people around you, like you can be as humble and as great and as at this and as at that, but at the end of the day, like I feel like there's always a second meaning, and I think that's the unfortunate part of what's going on, because it's not being perceived the right way. And not only is it not being perceived the right way, we have visual evidence that we're being lured. The bricks are being put out.
Yeah.
The windows are being broken by their own.
The gates are sawed open, right?
Like it's like they're luring us to like, hey, like you're already kind of like weak. Let's do this. And it's such a weird narrative to follow, because it's literally like, that super weird expression, like don't you're starving, but I'm gonna put a piece of meat right over you.
There you go, Jaylah. Now you see, that's what I'm talking about, right? Like who Who is sitting in their living room and thinking like, shit, like, damn, right? What's actually like, why would this happen right here, right? Why would these people, whoever is doing it, right? Because I also want to make a distinction between protesters that are protesting and people that are like enacting their rage and frustration by like going into like Walgreens and Foot Locker to take shit.
I just think it's weird that it all happens after hours. It's like the protesters that want to protest for the right reasons, that want to be out there. They're there at 12 noon, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're there till late hours doing the right thing until it's, like, hey, curfew, whatever. But then it's like all that other stuff, it's like it goes and it happens after dark, but it still feeds the stereotype.
Right.
And it's so frustrating.
And so
I think that goes back to kind of what we're talking about in this episode, which is like the distractions, right? And in this case, those bricks and the narrative that there's, this shadow organization, trying to lure us into doing this thing, into becoming looters and rioters, like that also, even though it's true and like we have video that's going on, part of that is like people are using social media to distract from what we're actually talking about, which is like, that is crazy that somebody's doing that, but also that's going to happen in any kind of movement. There's going to be people that are going to try to sabotage it and do it. More importantly, let's continue the message of Black Lives Matter. What are the real outcomes that we're looking for? And so like, it's good that we're talking about this. That's what this is. That's what this episode is really about. Like, Jaylah aiming one of the main distractions. These alternative narratives that get created to distract us from kind of the work that's really being done, what people's real intentions are.
And so
we're talking about something though that we have on our list, which is property over people, right? Yeah. That's a concept that like this property and these businesses are more valuable than the lives that have been lost, or more valuable than people's right to kind of have this kind of protest. We kind of set some stuff back and forth, but Lou, you had some stuff that you wanted to kind of touch on about that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that that I touched on was this concept around like capitalism, and racism being tied together, right? If we think about what capital is, right? If we think about the ways that the United States itself came to be and became a wealthy place, it was based on the oppression of Black people, right? And has evolved and continued to be on the oppression of Black indigenous people of color, right? And so what happens is when you remove those things, then right, the structures that this country was built on start to shake, right? And so then what happens? Who's there to defend those things? Who's there to defend those things, right? We have law enforcement agents that are here to defend the interests of the state and protect property, right? Now, another distraction, right? It's like so many distractions at the same time, because there's this distraction that like, oh wait, but the police are here to serve, protect. It's like, yo, look, check the math, go back to when, to the beginning of the history of policing, right? And they were here to protect the interests, the property, and the livelihood of white folks, right? And to catch slaves, bring them into for bounty, and make their cash that way. But let's go back, right? So property over people, right? I don't own a business, right? And I have a few businesses that I'm like, yo, please, just like leave the tostada spot and the cafecito spot alone, right? And I'm gonna tell you that. Right? And the truth is, like, I don't, right? I'm gonna say I don't believe that that's a place that's gonna be touched, right? And I know that what it means to the community, and beyond what it means to the community, what it has done for the community, right?
Yeah, but that's what you wish to happen. But look at the prime example of the Bronx.
Yeah, but
and what I'm saying is, the question is this, right? I don't want to go into a conversation whether I'm like, yo, let's go do it. What I'm doing is giving people some more perspective, right? Because
no, absolutely, but there's like and that's where I feel like a lot of the issues kind of stem down, even for Dykeman. And I am like, I get what they were doing, but I also understand it's like, okay, look at what happened in the Bronx. I don't blame Dykeman for anything that they decided to do. because what happened in the Bronx is completely unacceptable, especially for one of the poorest boroughs in our state. Like, that doesn't make sense.
I got you. Now, Jaylah, name me what those businesses have done for the community.
And what those businesses were.
Tell me, because you're staunchly defending those businesses.
No, I'm not defending anybody. I'm going from what I've obviously seen. I've lived in the Bronx before. I came to Florida not even a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I live in the Heights. Like, I understand the community. But now, I get they went into Foot Locker. They could have done that in the Heights. There's one on 181. What's the problem? Like, I just wish there would have been more unity, the same way there was in Dyckman and what they did within the Heights, and that wasn't the case.
They didn't trust.
You know what we're not. Look, this is what we're not talking about. We're not talking about the ass whooping that people are getting from police. We're not talking about the heinous crimes that police have caused against people, against families, right? We're not talking about that. And so what we do is we talk about, like, damn, that's messed up. Yo, that Foot Locker. Yo, I don't give two fucks about that Foot Locker.
Nobody does. Nobody does. Right? They'll be fucking fine. They have their own fucking security insurance or whatnot.
And you know what? If not, I think that showed us a great lesson, right? You know what that showed us about Dyckman? Oh, that's great. Dyckman, you just showed us that we do not need police, right? Yeah. What you taught us, Dyckman, is that people from the community can take charge over the community, right? Now, there was problematic things that happened, right? There was footage of them targeting some young black men, some young African-American men, also like, oh, you're not from our hood, right? And that's a conversation that's happening, and I'm sure folks have been engaged in like what the optics of that looks like. But I think that's one of the lessons learned, right? That like, oh, so what you're saying is that we could take care of our own hood. Got it, right? Another clause that takes away from the real situation, which is to defund the police, right? And so I want to go back a little bit just to lay some context over
also,
this.
those businesses have insurance, by the way.
Boom, right? Let's not even talk about like that, right? People worried about like boxes of things that they never gonna get, but I don't hear anyone memorizing the name of Breonna Taylor. I don't hear that. I don't hear that, right? I don't hear how people are invested in the divestment of police departments and in the reinvestment in healthcare systems, right? In educational systems. I don't hear that as part of the conversation. What I hear is like, damn, yo, the pizza shop. Yo, stop. So distraction, right? Distraction. That means that we have traction towards something and we've been moved away from that traction, right? When people are talking to me about the looting and the stuff, so tell me, what's the traction you think we should be on? No one can tell me. Oh, well, it's right, it's wrong. Look, that's cool. You could stay in that conversation, but I know the way that I know a distraction when I see one, right? If it causes me fear, right? If it kind of causes me confusion, right? If it makes me feel insecure, if it confuses me, those right there are something that I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. What's behind this thing right here, right? But the thing is that those are also core things that latch onto us and then put us right into that cycle of socialization, right? Where we either don't do anything, we don't make waves, we promote the status quo, right? And that's what we do. And so, and I see that over and over and over again. Now, when someone's saying, yo, you know what? We should do something different, right? There's change here that we need to be creating from this situation. Right? You know what? There's some raising of consciousness that needs to happen. There's some interrupting. There's some educating. There's some taking a stand. There's some questioning. There's some reframing that's happening. I'm like, okay, now we're moving towards traction.
Lou, not to interrupt you, but one of the main things, the acknowledgement, right? Acknowledgement of this, of what this system that we're talking about and what police. So what is at the kind of heart of police brutality itself, which is white supremacy, right? That's one of the big distractions, that's going on with this. And those narratives, like, I don't even want to go too deep into the whole, MAGA.
Why you gotta say that, bro? That's a distraction right now.
It is.
The king is spin.
But white supremacy, we got a dude in the White House That's the brand that he's promoting right now. That's what he got his endorsement with. You feel me?
Bro, I hear that. This is my comment. And I'm gonna take risk, man, up here.
But when we're talking about this distraction specifically, this concept behind like white supremacy and what you talked a little bit about the history of policing, right? That's where this thought process came from that for me, because you talked about the history of policing. It's grounded pretty much in white supremacy, something that was created, to make sure that landowners and slave owners, which were one and the same at the time, that their property and stuff was protected. And once the slaves are free, it's like, well, now we need to make sure that we keep all these new individuals in the world in check. And guess what? We need them back into the system as being incarcerated. We could talk about Jim Crow. We could talk about, all these things about white supremacy, but specifically with right now with what is going on, it's one of the main distractions. And these groups that have been going out and doing counter protests. I'm just kind of stopping, all these components of this white supremacy that's been going on right now.
Yeah. And bringing it back to this conversation, right? Again, the question is this, right? We understand that all of what's happening is necessary, right? Why? Because we need every single person involved. We need every single person to, like, from where they are to move into this thing, right? And so one of the distractions is kind of like, oh, you, in order to like speak up, stand up, educate, you need to be this way. You need to be militant. You need to march the streets. You need to, right? And so what happens is the other distraction is like, oh, we're just gonna talk about BS, right? We don't get heard without all of these things happening, right? And also and at the same time, which is another thing that it's very difficult for some folks to hold the both and, right? Right, the nuance, not even the nuance, the both and of like that needs to happen, and also what we need to be going up there with demands. What is it that we're asking for? So when people are telling me, man, I don't know, that thing is wrong. Okay, so what do you suggest? I don't know. I suggest that they don't steal sneakers. Yeah, that's it. This is gonna stop systemic racism. Got you. I heard you. Say less, right? Now, when people are thinking about like, why is that happening? Oh, because poverty. Right? Why is that happening? Oh, because redlining. Why is that happening? Oh, because there's also businesses that are taking on these zones that want to come. Right? Like, again, it's deeper than that. And I think what's important is that we also continue to be informed. The distraction is that we don't know who to get our information from. Right? And so, to your question about the white supremacists, yes, there's so much information, right? Just on Instagram, bro. Like you could literally, like on like the Instagram University, bro. Like all the, and I do recommend, of course, make sure that it's sourced, right? Make sure that who like wrote this thing. Make sure that like, where's this information coming from? But it's different.
I think that's one of the things that right now we're getting bombarded with so much information, and it's still on the same topic of the distraction thing, which is like. Now that we have so much information available to us, that filtering information is really important. Rick had made a comment the other day when we were having kind of our discussions. Rick, remember you were kind of mentioning the fact that if you're somebody who just gets your news from Facebook, whatever outlet you mentioned, I think it was Fox News that you mentioned, but it's like that's gonna frame. That's gonna have an impact.
The way you think, the way you feel.
For sure. So I feel like that, for me, in terms of like what you're talking about, the distractions and focusing on what the issue at hand is or what the action plans are, what we're actually looking for. That has to do a lot with the media, like that you're consuming too. Because I feel like if you don't know where you're getting that information from, if you're not filtering it, correctly, you're not going to be all message necessarily. You're not going to be.
You just named another distraction, right? A main one, right? So what happens then is people start to ask, man, what are we going to do about the Trump supporters and all those white people? And it's like, yo, like whoever's on the streets doing this work, right? That's not like, yo, don't waste your time doing that. right? Don't waste your time doing that, right? What we need to be doing is connecting with people that are already doing that work. Another distraction is that we, the thing that is sold to us is that this revolution, right? That these uprisings, right, are ahistorical. That there haven't been countless peoples with history of struggle and like liberation on their minds and at their fingertips for years, right? And so what happens is people start to talk because they're like, oh well, I don't know, nothing's gonna change, right? And people have been working, specifically black people have been working to allow so many freedoms since like we could. And so in that situation, right, we need to be in a space where it's like, you know what, who's working on this thing? Who's been working on this thing, right? What are they up to? What do they have to say about what's going on? And how can I support that work, right? Your racist Theo and Abuela, they're gonna continue doing their thing.
Yep.
And at the same time, how are we supporting the work in our own community, right? How are we listening to what those people, those collectives, have been doing for our community, and how do we put our attention, right? How do we help them gain traction?
So if you're someone that wants to get involved, what are some, and you mentioned sources for getting information. What are some important tips to keep in mind when you're reading something or you're getting your information from a specific site?
Man, I think you need to check. Well, so for example, right? I think you need to check sources, right? When I see something go up, I'm like, who's behind this thing, right? What's the history of doing this work? And that's not to discredit any people that like are brand new, right? And may not have like history in a traditional way, right? But really looking at patterns of like, what do they have to say about this thing, right? I also want to add a caveat that no one is perfect, right? That no one is perfect. And I think when it comes to something like this, right? This I would say urgent response that like our country is uprising for right now, what's important is that we understand where it is that we want to gain traction on, right? And who's been saying that thing for years, right? And what has it looked like even in other countries? What has it looked like in other countries? Shit, look at how much we've been learning from Hong Kong protesters, right? On how to like show up in ways that are safer when we go to these protests, right?
Even with the bricks, right? Like I saw that, like that they were like, all right, cool, you're gonna give us bricks to place and supposedly throw and hit and make damage. We're gonna place barricades for you guys so you guys can't come get us.
Right? There it is. Right? Yeah, man. And I how can I say, it feels good, I think. It feels good in a weird way to gossip. Right? It's like one of those things that is like, yo, like, como que tiene un sabor, right? That like gives people just like a juicy, right? Like it's a juicy thing. And I think at this moment, right, what is necessary for every single person is to be thinking about what is their role in this, right? What is their role? And I'm gonna name what is their role in defending Black lives? What's your role, right? Are you fulfilling your role by talking about like, damn, yo, them sneakers? Okay, cool. So what are you gonna do? What are you doing? You putting up like a fund for like Foot Locker to get all their sneakers back? Like what? Like or are you like putting sneakers to people that are like shoeless, right? Like what's your role in that, right? And again, I'm not like shaming people, right? What I'm saying is I would love to see more curiosity, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you had mentioned to me when we had talked about this before was the concept of like intention versus impact, right? Like you want to help. There's people that genuinely want to help and want to do things about what's going on and want to support, and they have this feeling of like, oh, I don't know how to help. I would help, but I don't know how to help. You're talking about, having that intention of wanting to help, is great, but like, what is your impact, on it? And there's also the side of it where like you do something, you gave kind of a little anecdote. I don't remember really. So you were talking about a situation where somebody's doing something on behalf of somebody else, but it's not necessarily what that person asked for, right?
Yeah.
And so the concept of like, I want to help, so I'm gonna go and Lou got into it with with his landlord, and I'm gonna go and beat his landlord up. I think that's the thing that you the example that you kind of used, and it was like so.
And I would.
But is that what Lou needed? Did you ask Lou if that's what he wanted you to do?
Boom.
So supporting kind of like having that kind of like I don't know what the right word would be, but something.
A solution for someone who doesn't know what to do.
I'm gonna introduce a term that I learned off of Instagram, right?
Okay.
Optical allyship.
What does that mean?
Optical allyship, right?
Allyship. Okay. What does that mean?
So what that means is that the only reason that I'm doing that thing for you, right? Like going to beat up your landlord, right? Is because it might make a statement, but it doesn't go beneath the surface, right? And it's not aimed at breaking away from the actual oppression that you're suffering.
I feel.
Right? It's like, yo, we boys for life, yeah, right? But like, how does that help you beyond that surface, right? And again, not saying that shit ain't necessary, right? But what I'm saying is the end, right?
Right.
And so I think that's one of the main points. Understand what optical allyship is, right? Understand if what you're doing only goes beneath the surface, right? And maybe that's as far as you could go this time around. But if you have an intention to go beyond that, right, then there really is an opportunity for you to be doing something, right? And that might be the thing that you need, right? And so I think that also requires a conversation with you. Like, yo, what do you need? What do you need?
Yeah. And I think that's what we were talking about. You kind of mentioned that there are ways to help, that there are these resources. I think you gave us like a thing of, let me look at my notes right here.
I do have a question.
I'm ready. What's up?
So we talked a little bit about this before we started, which is why, like for me, I'm Central American, Costa Rican, Salvadorian. I'm a yin to the yang. My Costa Rican side, Black. I got Black. My grandfather's Black. My daughter is Puerto Rican, Costa Rican, Salvadorian. Her grandmother is 4 shades darker than you. And she is gorgeous. And even though her and I don't get along very much, I respect.
What's the question? I'm ready.
I respect the culture. What are some educational tools for people like me that have to stand there and fight our own families? I have to sat there. I had that conversation with my mother. I had to remind her that her granddaughter is Black, even if she's raised and born in Boca Raton, Florida, even though she's whatever my mother wants her to think should be. She's Black. At the end of the day, she's Black. I don't care. Whatever she walks to New York, to Costa Rica, to other countries, states, world, schools, down the street, she's Black.
Okay.
So as a white mother to a
I wouldn't say you're white, but okay.
I mean, no. White skin. I'm white skin. I'm not going to sit here and think that I'm an Afro-Latina, because I'm not. There's nothing Afro-Latina about me, and that's a disrespectful term for me to even try to use. Even though in my soul, I feel like I am Afro in some way, shape, or form, but I was not born that way. I was born white. And I have learned in the sensitivity of this progress, because this is not something that just started now. For me, my daughter's about to be 5 years old. This is something I have been fighting, learning, growing, educating myself on since she was born, because I knew there was going to be a drastic difference between her and I. Back in the day when my ex-husband grew up with his mother, they would call his mom the nanny, because she was Black and he was light skinned.
Yeah.
Even though he's not white, but he's light skinned.
Yeah.
So now we're living in opposite world where I'm the light skin and that's my daughter. And people will not let me vocalize my voice. People have told me, shut up, sit down, you're white. And that's not fair because I'm here trying to learn, grow, educate myself to teach my daughter what it is her culture, her skin color, her background means to her. So what educational tools do you have for people in our situation that are pro Black Lives Matter, that are always with the cause, but that because of the way we simply look, we can't be pro?
Got you. I see Clarence Wright has entered the space. What's up, Clarence? Great. Let me see. This is no shade. This is no shade at all.
No. Go for it. And I'm trust me, I've gotten shade. So I'm ready for this.
Google.
Okay.
Right? He's not, no, I know, like I'm being 100.
No, and he's right.
I'm being 100. I think again, let me see, right? Because then there's
I've obviously at this point at 5 years after having her, I've educated myself.
Yeah, I know what you're asking.
But there are people that haven't, or that they're just first dealing with this. So where do they start?
I know. I felt that. And really when I answer it, that's why I want to lay the context of it, right? Because I think that even a step before that, now that I think about that, I think one of the things that can get you to even notice that that's available is to understand that your identity is not ahistorical, right? I think one of the things that could get you to even move into the place of like, let me find out more about this, is to come to the place of like, wait a minute, I may have been born this year in this place, but my identity, right, has importance. Now, my identity has importance, right? Whether I agree to what level of importance it does or not, whether I feel that I'm privileged or not by the identity, that my identity is not ahistorical, and that depending on where you're born, something random like that, it also changes what your identity means, right? And so I think that's one of the things we need to interrogate that, right? We need to interrogate, like, wait, what does it mean to be Central American here in California, in Brooklyn, in
Miami?
In Miami, what does it mean, right? That's the first step, because then I think that will then provoke folks to be like, let me learn more about this, right? And of course, you'll see things. I'm not saying that it's like all knowing, but you'll start to see certain things, right? And once you pick up patterns, right, and kind of like they relate to you and they resonate with you, then you'll be like, shoot, right? And so I think in that there's something about interrogating your own identity, right? You doing it for yourself, right? Knowing that there's a history that comes with the identity that existed long before you arrived through your mother's womb, right? And that it means something, right? And that it can, and I think that knowing about that actually empowers you. I know that people talk about ignorance is bliss.
Nope,
right?
Absolutely not.
But knowing about your identity and what it means in the context specifically, and again, I'm going to put us on track, of the United States history is vital. Is vital, right? And there's groups that are doing that type of work. I'm a consultant for like 5 of them, right? For five of those organizations that are doing the work, right? The Center for Racial Justice and Education, NYU's Metro Center, for Equity and Transformation in Schools. Oh my goodness, the Rabble for Children. There's dismantling racism, right? There's undoing racism.
This question, I think the answer to this question is that they should DM you.
Oh my goodness, don't.
DM him, guys. Everybody who has questions, that's the man.
Listen. That's a good question. That's a good thing.
Who knows?
So look. Yes, that's cool. That's cool.
No, I do think in our community
I got a Venmo. Hit the Venmo first, then the DM.
No, but I do feel like in our community we have a lack of information of what those things are. You know, if you realistically think about it,
And it's something I had to learn the hard way, which is
Jaylah,
like,
that's not by mistake. That's by design.
absolutely. Like for my mother, like I know that she left El Salvador because of their own civil war, and her sisters were going to be raped, and they had to flee the country.
Don't
And they
nobody
had
come to
to
the United
exile.
States because their country is better. You understand me? People move because they're looking for a better opportunity. But we also need to know what's the consequence, what's the price of that, right? Because automatically, as soon as you get here, what are we conditioned to do, right? We're conditioned to lose our language, to lose our culture, right? To lose our, and so what happens is like automatically you kind of you get forced into trying to fit this mold that makes you an ahistorical being. It makes you like, well, this is what you're gonna be here, right? And all that rah-rah shit that you like, that is in your heritage, your deep, rich cultural heritage, we don't need that here. And so if you don't have that, then you can't connect to Black history, right? You can't imagine or conceptualize a world that has a context of Blackness in it, right? And so I think that that's an important thing that you bring up. And I also think another part of that is this, right? Listen to Black people, right? Listen to Black people. When you're asking Black people for advice, like, yo, you're not the only person that's like, so what should I do about this? Go to fucking Google. Go to your friends, right? Like, do that first, right? There's so many free resources that give you information, really good information, right? As to like what you can you do, right? Where you can put money on, right? And I also want to folks to remember, right? And I know there must be folks that are like, yeah, that's true. This is not that discussion. Yes, right? The Latinx experience and the Black experience are linked, right? And right now, anti-Black racism is the urgent crisis.
Yes. So I want to
That's
ask.
the urgent crisis that we need to stand up and be like, you know what? I am in defense of Black lives.
Yes. So for someone who has great intentions and wants to take action, you mentioned first going to a great source and researching who's been doing the work first. What advice would you give that person?
What do you mean? Tell me more what you mean by that question.
As far as like urging people not to stay silent, like what's their safety plan? How do they get informed? You know.
Yeah. I think what we're talking about is like practical advice for if you want to be, if you're planning to participate in the protest. Is there any practical advice, that they may need in terms of like being a part of it and something to prepare for that?
Because there's people who don't want to stay silent and they want to get involved, but they don't know how.
Yeah, they also don't know. It's not something we've culturally been raised on. Like, hey, let's no, we're taught to be cool, calm, and collected. We're cool. We're taught to be a chameleon, to blend into our environment. So now that we're being able to use our voice, how can we do that and not feel like, okay, we're out of line or we're doing the wrong thing or we're going to offend somebody? How can we do this the correct way and be there for our people?
I think the answer is in your question, right? There is no correct way.
I could have bet money that you were going to say
I think that, by the way, one of the indicators of white supremacist culture is perfection, right? This idea that things have to be polished and have to have, like a blazer with a necktie and have to be shaved. And
either you do it right or you don't do it at all.
Right? There's this thing that we've been sold that it's like you need to be perfect. And in this game, right, of racism, think about it. We will never be that, because what is the standard? What's the standard? Right? Right. And so what can we do? In this particular instance, I think folks can go into literally Google right now and be like, how do I support Black Lives Matter? Enter, clap. You will have like 50 different like blogs that tell you to donate, to support, to repeal this fund, to link up with this org automatically. How do I defend Black lives? Boom, click. Right?
Yeah, but you can't believe everything you read on Google. Like especially now, the government obviously we're obviously being told, if you're obviously on social media, if you're on Black Lives Matter, if you're trying to be educated, you see that there's a lot of either whether it's propaganda or whether it's setups or whether it's, you know, not them setting up their own Black Lives Matter sites or deals, or, and that's where I feel like people get lost. So is there any specific places, organizations, people that you know you can trust, whether that's that, you know, I don't know, like whatever that may be, is there a specific place where people feel safe rather than Google? Because we hear it's just like Facebook. Don't believe shit on Facebook. Don't believe everything you Google. Don't. So how do you do that?
So Clarence has put up a lot of IG pages on the side called Color of Change, Black Lives Matter, NAACP showing up for racial justice, civil rights org, Reclaim the Block, and I can't see the bottom one. So he gave a couple, but there's one that I want to highlight that Lou put me onto. That's called A Movement for Black Lives.
The movement. That's who I'm taking right now. That's who I'm taking my marching orders for, right?
Yeah. And that's what we want to know, because sometimes it's just like you said, it's one voice that needs to spread it. Your one voice or Rick's one voice just spread it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us. Yep. 6 of us regurgitates to 10 of us, 10, 20, 20, 30, 30, now, 40.
Now, Jaylah, I hear that, and I want to just name, right, something that there's so many distractions, and I think one of them is like waiting for like Superman to arrive. I think one of the distractions is waiting for someone to tell us what to do, right? And I think part of that is also waiting for like a charismatic leader to lead the way, right? The thing is that we know what has happened throughout history to those charismatic leaders. We know.
Yeah.
We know what happens, and then what happens is done. What happens to the rest of the movement?
Nothing.
Right? And so and that's why it's important to decentralize this information, right? So that it's no longer like, oh, this is the person that we get to target, and like the government said this and that, and if that person gets cut off, the whole thing gets cut off. I think that we need to be able to hold that type of leadership across, right? So that like it could be you, it could be me, it could be Rick, it could be Benny in the back. I see you, bro. Right? It could be any of us at any given moment.
No, right? I love that point, because that's sometimes something we don't think about, and sometimes it takes somebody with a step back, with that perspective, to be able to say something like that. And I think that's why these conversations are so important, because you get so consumed in kind of, you know, especially we're creatures of habit, so we're used to comfortability, whatever news stations we're used to, whatever outlets we're used to, whatever social media we're used to. We are kind of like in that habit. So sometimes it does take conversations like this, and that's why I think it's super important that we're having this conversation, because it opens up that light that's like, oh my God, that was there and I didn't even notice.
And you know what's something, Jaylah? You know what's something that you said, Jaylah, that put us on traction, was that you were ready to be uncomfortable, right? You were ready to do that. And I think one of the distractions is our comfort, right? Anything that is uncomfortable to us feels like it's a threat to who we are and our identity, and therefore we won't engage in it. And you know what? That discomfort may be a portal into new learning. That may be the portal into like, oh wow, I didn't see things that way, right?
Like right now, I'm in a humble zone. Like I need to be educated. I do not know enough to speak. All I know is how to ask questions.
But now you know. But now you know, when someone in your family says, yo, how do I engage in Black Lives Matter? What are you gonna tell them?
I already know. I have the tools. And it's like even me stepping up, like I was telling you the story before then. I had the most uncomfortable position in my life, and it's been a burden on me for the past 4 days, because my mother came to my house and she showed me a picture that I had already posted, which was in Miami, a protest that happened where the Miami police and the protesters all kneeled to pray before the protest started. Yep. And that was the original, that is what happened. So now the Latino narrative was on Facebook, because again, my mom is Salvadorian, Central American. She goes by what she hears on Telemundo, Univision, and Facebook. That's it. Those are her three news sources.
The sources of information. That's why you have to look at where you're getting your information from.
Correct. And that's why I asked the questions I asked, because again, she looked at me. My daughter is Costa Rican, Salvadorian, Puerto Rican. I've already told you my stepfather is dark as day, and my daughter's grandmother, my ex-husband's mother, they used to say to her, "Are you the nanny?" Because she was black and they were white.
Yeah. And in those
so
moments,
I heard those stories and I've been through that. So when I looked at my mother and my mother looked at me and said, "Oh my God, poor cops. They had to kneel and surrender in front of protesters so they wouldn't get hurt."
Well,
my neck almost snapped. I did one of these. I'm like, what did you just say inside of my household?
Well, let's not forget. So this episode, we did it to kill the noise and stick to the narrative and try not to fall into those distractions. You know, you just mentioned cops kneeling with protesters. What are those protesters protesting? Police brutality. You know, one of the excuses I've heard a lot is, "Oh, but there's also good cops. Not all cops are bad cops." And if that were true, good cops would be speaking out about bad cops. And not just now, because I've seen some videos where officers are talking about it, but they always talk about that blue line. You can't cross that blue line. So for the simple fact that, you know, that's great that they kneeled with them, but the purpose is, you know, maybe they didn't want things to escalate. I don't know what went on in Miami, but I know if I'm protesting something, I'm not going to engage with police officers.
Right. No, but my point.
What got me here is that, and that's the reason why we're doing this episode, is because there's a protest going on. And what do we want to accomplish with this protest? And what are the goals that need to happen? And the news is going to spin it and spin it and spin it. So is Twitter, so is Facebook, so is Instagram. And whatever is negative, that's what they're going to run with first. Because they want to distract.
That was the point of my conversation with my mother, was that she's listening. She's so busy listening to Univision and Telemundo and Facebook that I had to set a very quick reminder. Hi, I love you, but your granddaughter, even if she was born in Boca Raton, Florida, raised in Boca Raton, Florida, and raised by your white Salvadorian, she's Black. And there's nothing that's going to take that away from her. When she steps out that door, she's Black. When she goes to school, she's Black. When she goes to Costa Rica with you, she's still Black. And I think that happens a lot in our Latin culture, in our Latin communities. I have to sit here and fight my own mother. And I love her to death. And what hurts me the most, and I'm going to be very honest, and it's the one thing I've been fighting the most and trying to figure out, how do I change this narrative, or how do I educate my daughter better? It's the simple fact that this is how my mother feels as a white Latina.
Yeah.
And she loves and will die for my daughter. How will outside people who don't give a shit about her act with her? And how do I, as her mother, educate her on this? And that's really hard to fathom.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to make sure that we include this great resource. It's called Dismantling Anti-Blackness, Racism, and White Supremacy in La Sala and Beyond.
Oh, I like that.
I'm going to make sure that y'all get that.
Please.
You know.
Put it up. We have, if you can find it. Lou, what's it called again?
It's called Dismantling Anti-Blackness, Racism, and White Supremacy
in La Sala
and Beyond. Right. And so, you know, I think, and so again, what I want to name is that there are resources there, you know, and I want to again bring us back to how we can move away from the conversation of defending Black lives, right? And not because we don't want to defend Black lives, but because there's so many ways that we're like ousted apart from each other that it feels like we have to like name our like own or claim our own place in these things, right?
Absolutely.
And I think it's important for us to be understanding how much space we take up based on our identities, right? And to understand, like, okay, right now in this moment, how am I uplifting the voices of Black people, right? How am I using whatever privileges I may have, right? Which again, you'd have to learn what privileges you have, right? To support the defense of Black lives, because that's what we're talking about, right? And so that's the resources I think that will help people really get into that, because I understand, like, you wanna feel like you're in a place that you can talk to your family, right, about these things. And I'll be honest, right, I travel the country doing racial justice, racial equity consulting work, right? And all the work that I do with so many organizations, right, of different dynamics, the hardest conversations have been with my own fam, right? And it can't be a either or, because Black lives need us now, right? We can't wait until, like, okay, everyone in my family understands me. Now I could go and, like, do this thing, right? We can't wait for that moment. We can't wait. Okay, now that I got my chips in order, now we cannot wait, right? Because in a global pandemic, I'm talking about, like, this is like we are in a global pandemic, right? In just a month, how many Black bodies have we seen murdered at the hands of police?
Yeah.
Right? And so it can't wait. It cannot wait, right? And that's why I say you don't have to be perfect, right? You have to understand that this is not work for you to do by yourself. It is reflective. There's parts of the work that is internal work that you need to do, but it is not work for you to be doing by yourself, right? There's community that's available, and there's community that's willing to be like, yo, look, you know what? They're doing this work and they can't really be bothered by you on some, like, but how do I do? Oh, we'll hold you down, right? We'll teach you what you gotta do. But right now, this is what we need right here, right? Craze can't wait for me to, like, lose 20 pounds and, like, get it back in, in, like, muscle mass while he's getting evicted. He needs me to go and, like, handle business now, right? I guess that's I don't know. I don't know how far we could go with that analogy. This far, right here, right? And so I think right now, again, I want to say, right now, there are actionable steps that have been outlined by Black movement leaders, by organizations that have been doing the work of defending Black lives and making it known that Black lives matter. All Black lives matter everywhere, right? And right now, what folks are asking for is for us, demanding for is for us to defund the police, right? To disinvest in the billions of dollars that we're giving, police forces to militarize themselves and to then use it against us, right? Versus investing that money into health systems, into educational systems, into social service systems, right? And I mean, even police sheriffs across the country are saying, like, yo, like, y'all giving us everything to do, right? We like taking cats out trees, we serving, like, as, like, emotional. Nah, look, right? That's not, there's so many services that we can move those funds to that we don't need to get, like, NYPD a tank, right? Or, like, a scanner, right? Like, freaking war shit. Fact, right? The cost of 1 year of NYPD misconduct lawsuits, how much you think it is?
In the middle.
Give me a number.
I'm gonna say 10 million.
Go higher.
25.
Higher. Multiply it.
It can't be 50.
$230 million, right? 200. You know how much it costs, bro? You know how much it would cost for all of New York City residents to get free bus journeys? Free bus rides. You know how much it would cost for all New Yorkers? $217 million. You know how much it costs, bro? You know how much it costs to equip those officers that are, like, in peaceful protest, right? How you in riot gear, right, when there's no riot, right? You know how much it costs, bro? That suit, right? I'm talking about the helmet, the shield, the gloves, the suit. You know how much it costs, bro?
It's like $50,000.
Bro, it costs $500 for that suit, right? You know how much it costs to equip a doctor with gloves, shield, mask, and gown? $15.
Yeah, that's about right.
You feel me? So it's like, what, bro? What do you? And on top of that cash, bro, do you know that NYPD, bro, offers like they're consultants to other police forces. So
Yeah.
so like they even make profit off of like other deals with other police departments, right? They got a cut off of it. They had some like deal with Microsoft. Please look it up, folks, right? Like don't just believe what I'm telling you, right? Had to do with Microsoft. Microsoft sold them some intelligence software that the NYPD helped to create, and they got a cut from that, right? Bro, come on, man.
Yeah, I think we talked about to stay on message. You mentioned that what we need to focus on right now is defunding the police, reinvesting into systems in our community, to do our community work as well. And I think Rick mentioned a piece of
50A, and not just arresting and charging the 4 officers, but also convicting. Because charging is one thing, but charging doesn't mean anything if they're just going to walk at you.
True.
So I want to thank Lou for taking time to do this episode with us. I truly appreciate it.
Rick, can I say one more thing?
Go ahead.
Right? Now let me tell you, this is off Insta, bro. Right here, right? When we think about budget priorities here, New York City, right? For every dollar that goes to the NYPD and corrections, 29 cents goes to homeless services. For every dollar that goes to NYPD and corrections, 25 cents goes to the Department of Health. For every dollar that goes to NYPD and corrections, 19 cents goes to housing preservation and development, the PJs. For every dollar that goes into NYPD and corrections, 12 cents goes to youth and community development. Youth and community development. For every dollar that goes to NYPD and corrections, 1 cent goes to workforce investment. And you're gonna talk to me about looting?
Yeah, exactly, bro. Yo, for coming and talk to us on this really, really important, really serious subject. We usually always really goofy on the show. We don't go this serious most of the time, but this was very, very important for us.
This is fun. What are you talking about?
It was fun. I had my couple laughs. It's just informing.
You know what? Sometimes being informed is uncomfortable, and a lot of people don't like to be uncomfortable. And I'm sorry for you, but sometimes we got to get out of that comfortability to grow and learn.
And sometimes this is what traction looks like.
Learn. I like how you said traction.
Traction just the word traction just makes me feel like you're rubbing up against me, though.
Yeah. Ooh.
I want to be
comfortable. That might be uncomfortable.
We're taking the time out. If you want to follow him on Instagram, is at LouKnowsGood.
Knows good.
He's always available to shine some light on you.
Yeah.
And also he's a consultant.
If you have questions about how you can get educated, you can DM Lou directly.
Yep.
Or email.
And if you just want to support a beautiful black brother like myself, hit the Venmo.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of the work that I do, as you can see, is not too mainstream, right? And so you imagine people that call me in are like, well, no, can you just be a little bit softer? Can we? Nah, we not. That's not where we at. Right? And so if you support that type of work, hit me up. If you need that type of work in your life, on all honesty, you could for real hit me up. If you need to know where this shirt is from, hit me up too. Hey, shout outs Hasta Muerte. Shout out to Hasta Muerte Cafe out in Fruitvale, California, West Side, West Coast. Right? I love this coffee shop. They do not allow any pigs in the coffee shop.
Let's go.
So thanks again. We'll come back in about 20 minutes. We'll She fire. The episode will be up. I'll also put up some links to the pages and resources that we mentioned on our, not just the Instagram, but the website as well.
Repeal 50A, defund the police.
Facts. Thank you, Lou.
Thank you.
I love that man.